So my name is Sarah O'Day, and I am the YWIB-San Francisco Young Women in Bio San Francisco Chair. This is a joint venture between our YWIB-San Francisco and YWIB-Southern California chapter to host this event for you at College Track. And Christina Herbert, who is also here, is the chair in Southern California. Now, at Young Women in Bio, our mission is to empower young women to become tomorrow's leaders in the world of STEM. And we have been working with College Track in the Bay Area for the past three years or so to bring you a curriculum related to STEM and really help you see what are the opportunities that exist in STEM beyond healthcare. We're all working in healthcare, but we're not all doctors. So there's a lot of opportunities for you. And as of this year, we have started our collaboration with College Track Los Angeles. So we are thrilled to have you all here. And as Barbara mentioned, please ask as many questions as you want. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Dr. Barbara Trupin, who will be moderating today's event. Barbara?
Thank you, Sarah. Sorry, I just realized that I need to plug in my computer so that it doesn't stop halfway through. Welcome. Super excited that everybody's here. We have an amazing panel of women that will tell you a little bit about their careers, sort of how they came into the bioscience space and the path that they've taken along the way, and be able to share with you sort of the personal side of how they got to where they are and things they learned along the way. So without further ado, I would love folks to, I'll go through and have folks say a little bit as a brief introduction to get started. And in that introduction, just share, your name, who you are, a little bit of your educational experience, and your current role, and maybe a word or two of like a day in the life. What does that current role involve? And I'll start with Ching.
Hi, it's really nice to meet everybody virtually. And so my name is Ching Lim, and I got my bachelor's at Haverford College in Pennsylvania. Then I got my PhD in bioinorganic chemistry at Caltech, so local California university. And since then, I have transitioned through a number of different companies, but I'm currently at Amgen, which is a fairly large biotech, also headquartered in Southern California. I'm in Amgen San Francisco currently, and I lead a group of protein engineers, protein purifiers, molecular biologists. And a day in my life, I hate to say it, but it's a lot of meetings right now. I like to think that it's mostly about science and biochemistry and proteins. Sometimes it's about other stuff. So again, there's a balance of the science and the non-science, but it keeps me fresh and engaged all the time.
Beautiful. Thank you. Annie.
Hey guys, I am super excited to be here and share my story and hope to help everybody kind of find their path moving forward. So my name is Annie Mcguire. I am an attorney in the biotech industry. So I spent just over 13 years at Amgen, and most recently I was at Myocardia as a vice president of legal for healthcare law. A day in my life for healthcare law could have been pretty much anything. I work very closely with Kai, and it's really looking at the commercial aspects of a product and how do you get that into commerce. But before that, it's looking at the clinical trials and helping Barbara as well. We worked very closely together. What are we looking at in the clinical trials? Where's the risk in the clinical trials? So that's kind of my day in the life. I actually recently left Myocardia, and the next role I'll be taking is as a general counsel at an oncology startup in the coming weeks. For college, I went to Pace University in New York, and then I went to law school at New York Law School in Manhattan. So super excited to be here, and I hope you guys have tons of awesome questions.
Fantastic. Kai.
Unmute myself. That's the first step. Thanks for having me. My name is Kai Brown. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for having me. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I guess education-wise, my background, I went to college at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. and studied psychology pre-med. I then pursued my master's in biotechnology at Columbia University, and then I did another master's. I did my MBA, Master's of Business Administration at Stanford, and that was another 2-year degree. So currently, I'm working at Bristol Myers Squibb, a larger organization through an acquisition, but at BMS in a pipeline strategy role. So what does that mean? Well, I work closely with Sarah, Annie, Barbara, and so that role essentially is, it's a good role for a lifelong learner. So if you enjoy reading, learning about different diseases and treatment options, and thinking about how does a drug fit in with how patients are currently treated, how would you position it? You don't want to create a drug that, or any product that nobody wants, right? That nobody needs. So you want to make sure that you're creating an asset or a product that really meets patient needs. And so that's my main responsibility day to day. And I do spend a lot of time in meetings and on Zoom these days. Thanks.
And Shara.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Just thumbs up. Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm also very excited to be joining you today. My name is Shara Narsipur, and I'm the communications manager and a creative content editor for a company called Blue Nalu in the San Diego area. So we are a cell-cultured seafood company. That basically means that we make seafood directly from fish cells without getting the animal involved whatsoever. And I do most of the written and verbal communications. So that's messaging, positioning for the company. And I guess a typical day for me would consist of calls like everyone these days with different partners about projects that we're working on, and a lot of writing and editing. So I ghostwrite different responses for the CEO. I write articles and reports, newsletters, the social media. I also run our social responsibility platform, which is called Eat Blue. So that's an education platform for preserving ocean health, and topics range from microplastics to ocean acidification, carbon capture, and I manage a team of writers who put out pieces for the platform. So for my background, I received a bachelor's in business administration from SUNY Geneseo, which is a state university in New York, a really tiny school in upstate New York. And then I did a certification in environmental engineering and water studies at Stanford University. So yeah, really excited to be here and share what I can to help everyone on their journeys.
Thank you. And Tina.
Hi everyone, I'm Tina Dellis Reyes, and I'm a sales executive at a pretty niche biotech startup here in the Bay Area called Mission Bio. A bit about my educational background. So when they say that the average person changes their major 3 times, that's me. I started as a chemistry major at the University of San Francisco. And then my sister was hospitalized and I loved the nurses. So then I transferred my degree to nursing school. And then the entire time I was an undergrad, I actually worked full time. So I've worked full time since I was 17 years old. And I ended up taking a year off from nursing school because I was like pretty burnt out. So I'm very happy to talk about like any mental health issues as well. I took a year off and ended up finishing my bachelor's in healthcare administration at Cal State Long Beach. During that time, I had the pleasure of meeting someone to work for his startup and do a little bit of strategy consulting, as well as kind of dabble in biotech. And from there, I really fell in love with it. So I ended up moving on to another biotech once I finally finished my degree, a little longer than the average or than the 4 years, so non-traditional path, but ultimately made it out and began working in genetics in biotech. So my day-to-day, I am a salesperson. It's not something I thought I would do, but it's something that I absolutely love. I have so much independence. In a non-COVID world, I get to travel quite a bit, which has some pros and cons, but I got to see a lot of different places. And now I am also in a lot of Zoom meetings, but it's not like sales in the way I always perceived it to be. It is, you get to talk about science all the time and you're meeting with people who really need solutions for their research. So that's been pretty enjoyable.
I apologize. I've got an emergency call from my child's pediatrician.
Okay, understood. Hope that everything's okay. And so we're going to sort of reverse the order, and sort of the question I would love to ask is, and some of you have touched on this, sort of what was your first job out of school, and sort of how does that link to where you are now? And was that a, well, I did this and then the obvious next thing was this, and the obvious next thing, or was it like I zigged and I zagged and now I'm here? And so I would love to just hear, and I'm going to go back to Tina, and you had started sort of on that path, but is there, you know, anything that you wanted to add about, you know, how you're thinking about where some of those changes happened?
Absolutely. Thankfully, most of my zigzagging happened in undergrad. So once I finished, it was a little bit more linear. My first job was at a really large biotech in the genetic space called Illumina, and I was in inside sales. From there, I was really lucky. On a plane ride, I sat next to a really high-level executive at Illumina coming back from one of our company meetings, and she talked to me about how she had just flown to ASU and was speaking with them about building graduate programs that would speak a lot more about the technology that we were selling at the time. And it was the one grad program I applied to. She gave me a letter of recommendation after sitting on this plane with her, and I got in. So I did more full-time school and more full-time work. And I ended up moving on from Illumina from what we call inside sales to outside sales, where you're actually physically meeting with customers. So from there, I moved to the Midwest. I've always been a California person, born and raised, and lived in the Midwest for a little bit, and then kind of boomeranged back to the Bay Area because my partner is a physician here now in the Bay. So it was a lot more linear. I started at the entry-level inside sales position and kind of moved on and got promoted into outside sales. I've managed a team, and yeah, I mean, it was a lot. Grad school was a lot more enjoyable for me because I finally had figured out what I wanted to do.
Beautiful. Shara, you can share us your story as well.
Yes, happy to. So I did a lot of zigzagging. Now I'm in a STEM subject, but I wasn't really sure when I was going to get my bachelor's degree what I wanted. I knew that a lot of my passion was in science, but I was also really good at writing and communications. So ultimately, it was a bit of a toss-up for me, and I decided to go with the more literature and kind of communications path. And that resulted in, after graduation, I started working for a marketing company, a content marketing company. So I worked with freelance writers on a variety of subjects. A lot of them were scientific in nature. So we would copyright things for different medical offices. We did a lot of work for different biotech companies. So anyone who needed outsourced writing skills. And I was kind of the go-between for the writer and the client. And so in that was a really good learning process, but ultimately I decided that writing about things that I don't care too much about is not very fulfilling. And I really wanted to find something that I cared more about to address my skills and, apply them properly. So I did a lot of zigzagging after that. I did this whole path to find myself. I was fortunate enough to be given a position where I could work remotely. So I was remote for about 2 years and did a lot of international travel. And that eventually ended me in the Stanford Environmental Engineering and Water Studies program, when I decided that the environmental science route is really where my passion lies. So that was what I did. Made the jump to move to California as well. And then from there, I moved to San Diego, and I've been really fortunate to find roles within the environmental science space that are a really good merge of my communications background and environmental science, ocean science, and all of the various scientific kind of science communications that comes with that, because there's a lot of work that kind of falls into a niche where you aren't a scientist, but you're still trying to communicate that knowledge to a layperson audience who doesn't necessarily know all of the different terminology. So that was kind of where I've ended up. And it has not been traditional, very zigzaggy, but I really love where I've ended up.
Perfect. And Kai.
Right. I love to hear all these backgrounds, really interesting. My background is pretty non-traditional. I've always stayed in healthcare. I love science. It's truly my first love. But I definitely have zigzagged. I think my parents at one point may have been concerned, but I think that they're happy now. So in fact, my first real job out of school, I had applied when I was in my, I guess, right before my senior year of college. I applied for a research fellowship through NIH. And so that took me to Paris, France. And so I ended up working in a lab in Paris for like 4 months. And then I applied again and I went back again for the 4 or 5 months. And that was a really life-changing moment for myself. I realized that I love working in research, but I also really love life. And I wanted to travel and see the world. And that was my first time actually going outside of leaving the United States. And I was like 20 years old. It was like the best time of my life, but it also made me reconsider whether or not I would go to medical school, because I had told you guys I was pre-med before. So during that time, I decided I probably wouldn't go to medical school, but I thought maybe I'll just continue on the path of research. And my parents told me to come home because I can't just live a bohemian lifestyle in Paris. So they told me to come home, and I applied for a job as a biologist at Merck, at a big pharma company. And so I worked at Merck for 5 years as a biologist. I earned my master's during that time, and I really liked the lab. I am a lab person, but quite frankly, I ended up with really bad tendinitis. And so it like, basically it just like took over my hands. Like I could not really use them effectively. It was a pretty scary situation. I was very young. So I started thinking about other options. What else can I do with science and not be in the lab? And I was very interested in licensing and business development. So that's essentially doing deals, selling your development product to another company. And so I started talking to people at Merck about how to do that. How do I get into that? And they said, you have to get either a law degree or a business degree. So that's when it kind of was like, okay, let me go to Columbia, which Merck paid for. So if there's any opportunity where you can find a company that can pay for your school, take them up on it quickly. So they paid for a $50,000 education at the time. That's a long time ago, but that's a lot of money. And they paid for that. And that really solidified it for me that I would apply to business school. And so I have a very non-traditional background. When I talk to folks, most people that are in my space don't necessarily have like the science lab background. So I ended up going to business school at Stanford, and it was a great choice for me. It's very different. I was the only biologist there in the class, but it was a great choice for me. Definitely expanded my options, which I'm all about, creating options in life. And so it created a lot of options for me. I was able to pursue business development. I did that for a number of years. And then I went into marketing and, other aspects of the business. So it's been kind of a zigzag path. I think I'm it's going to stay in this lane, but you never know. There's a lot of opportunity within biotech and pharma, and the ability to merge both business and science is it's very valuable, and it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Annie.
So my path has been anything but linear. So I grew up in a really low income, uneducated family in New Jersey. And I was told over and over again that just that's what you're born into, and you don't really do anything different. So it took a lot of grit, definitely, and determination to just change that trajectory and say, this is not what I want to do. So I went to college, which was, a first for my family, and law school was definitely a first. And when I went to college, honestly, all I ever wanted to do was be an FBI agent. And unlike everybody else on this call, I hated science. I hated it. And so I went to college. I played soccer through college, and unfortunately I had a bunch of injuries that meant I couldn't actually become an FBI agent because I couldn't go through Quantico. So I had to pivot and figure out, well, what can I do next? And that's where law school came in. It was quite an afterthought. It was just like, okay, well, maybe this is the next best thing. And I didn't take the LSAT seriously to get into law school. I just thought, I'm going to go through the motions. I got into one law school, which is the one I attended, and it's not a very good law school, but I worked my butt off when I got there, and it definitely paid off. And in law school, I had an awesome internship at the district attorney in Manhattan. And I thought, well, if I can't be an FBI agent, maybe I can be a prosecutor. Unfortunately, that didn't work out either because I had a lot of student debt and I couldn't afford to be in a prosecutor position in New York. So working my butt off, I got an opportunity to go to a large New York City law firm, but I started out as basically a tax and labor lawyer. Like, it's called ERISA. No one knows what it means unless you actually practice it because it's that awful. And so I did that for a number of years. And I got a call from Amgen, this large biotech. I had no idea what Amgen even was, but we were in New York City. I was just about to get married, and we thought, why not just move to California? So we did. Moved to California. I took this role at Amgen, again, as their kind of labor tax lawyer. And I spent 9 years in different varying roles within their employment law group. And I really liked it, but I wanted something more. And I didn't really get a chance to understand kind of the science, or because at that point, as I got older, I started to actually like the science. I just didn't like science in high school and college. So I started to really get interested in, well, what else do we do here? And that's how I ended up going into healthcare law and what we called commercial law at Amgen. You know, and that path was not linear at all. I had a lot of people telling me I was silly for going from a very specific practice into a different practice, essentially like almost like a second career, because it was that different of a type of law. Went into the commercial law space, fell in love with it. And the reason I fell in love with it is because it got me that much closer to patients. And now, like, that is why I do what I do. I've stayed in this industry for this long, and I will stay in this industry for the rest of my career because we really get to impact patient and caregiver lives. So did that for a number of years at Amgen, and then ultimately moved over to MyoKardia in a similar role. And then MyoKardia was bought by BMS. And so now my next role will be this other role at general counsel in oncology, but you know, I've never been in oncology before either. So this is going to be a huge leap, and I have so much to learn in the oncology space. But once you are in the kind of biotech pharma science space, there are so many opportunities. And I think my path most notable in my path is really the grit and determination. Like, I was told by so many people that I was not going to succeed. And that gives me even more grit and more incentive to succeed. So, yeah, anybody wants to talk about it, I'm here.
Thank you. I-Ching.
So I probably have the most linear and boring path of everybody. What amazing things you guys have accomplished and what you've overcome. So I pretty much knew I wanted to be a scientist from when I was very young. I was, that kid who's out there in the creeks, like poking the bugs and collecting rocks and stuff. But when I was in high school, I had a fantastic chemistry teacher. And at that point I went, okay, that's the kind of scientist that I want to be. I want to be a chemist. So I went to college. And I think one of the crucial moments for me was when I was a sophomore, between my sophomore and junior year. And I had the opportunity to work in a lab over the summer. And that's when I figured out, this is it. I love it. I love the science. I love, putting chemical reactions together. I just love it all, the lab work, the thought process, etc. And so then I went to grad school and figured out, that it's not just chemistry, though. You want to be looking at the science of life, or biochemistry, or biology. So as I would say that it was fairly linear, because then I went to a number of biotech companies, some of which went belly up. That wasn't a lot of fun, a bunch of tough moments crying in corners as, you know, your co-workers, and you go through cycles of denial, grief, etc. But again, each time it's the kind of the working with the people, the projects, and feeling that what you're working on might make a difference in human health. That you are working on discovering new drugs, new processes, that you're working with smart people that you're learning from every day, working in teams. You know, that's one of the things that I love about science, the scientific endeavor. It's a very social endeavor. You know, you work in teams all the time, and you're hearing from the other members of the panel. You know, they all work in organizations and work on teams, and so it's, you know, it's a great path. It's a versatile path, and the human aspect of it is so important.
Beautiful, thank you. I'm just going to interject one story on my side. You know, I actually have the pleasure of working with several of the women on this call, and I'm struck by the fact that there are more people that are on non-linear path. I mean, that we bounce around. And so I think the thing that I often hear that makes me sad is when people feel like they have to choose early on, like, I'm going to be doing this, and, you know, don't feel like any of that has to stick for very long, because I've changed my path several times, you know, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for random reasons. I went from being a biochemistry major in the chemistry department to the biology department just to get out of a calculus class, because I knew that I had a lower bar on calculus and I hated calculus, so I could just switch majors. You know, and then other times where there was an opportunity that you didn't necessarily know was an opportunity, but kind of sounded interesting, and you just sort of take a chance, like, maybe that's something cool, maybe I should give that a shot. So I'm a huge fan of nonlinear, so I'm going to drop that in there. I'm going to call this the last bit before we open it to questions, our lightning round. And that is like the best unexpected thing that happened to you. You know, I hear somebody sitting on a plane. I got a job like at a you know, networking, or at a reception, a barbecue reception, like, you know, random weird things. Tell us, you know, one quick weird story of how an opportunity presented itself to you, and just to share something fun. And I'm going to start the lightning round with Kai.
So, well, a career pearl, something unexpected. So I think that, you know, I shared a little bit about this, but this opportunity to go to Paris, I mean, it was mind-blowing and kind of crazy. I didn't know any French. My mom was like insistent upon me bringing a dictionary. I was like, they're all going to speak English, no big deal. You know, I was like 20 years old. But they didn't speak any English. So I had to learn French, and I had to learn, you know, their ways of working in the lab, which is very different than in the States. But, you know, I was open to that experience, and I was able to draw a lot from it. I still have, you know, over 20 years later, I still have my friends there. I still talk to them. I still make visits. And, you know, the first time I actually even thought about going into industry, as they call it, pharmaceuticals and biotech, was actually from that experience. Had I not gone there, I don't even know if I would have known about it, because I went to a small state college and there wasn't a lot of exposure there. So, but I had friends there that worked for pharma companies in France, and they were like, you know, there's a lot of, I was about to do the French accent, you know, there's a lot of opportunities in the States, you should really think about it. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe. So that really opened the door to that first foray into the business side of science by going into industry at Merck. So, you know, I always say, be open to new opportunities. You never know where they're going to take you. and also be okay and comfortable with just charting your own path. So, you know, none of my family is in science. None of my parents were public school teachers, not in sciences, not in business. And I just tried to, you know, I think it's very important. I have a lot of faith in myself that I could just do it. And so I did it. And so, you know, I think it's important for everyone to think, you know, don't listen to people, the naysayers and all of that. Like, don't listen to them. You know, be self-assured of yourself. And I think the rest will follow. Work hard. And that's it.
Awesome. Annie.
I agree with Kai 100%. I think, you know, you got to put the noise out of your head and continue to chart your own path and follow that path that you have passion for. You know, there are going to be bumps in the road along the way. Not everything is going to be, you know, rainbows and butterflies, but if you're on that path and you do still have that passion and you do, you know, feel like that's the right way to go, don't be discouraged by that. The other thing I'd say too is look for an opportunity to find kind of growth in everything that you do. It could be the worst experience, right? And every woman on here, I can guarantee, has experienced this in their roles, right? It's the worst experience. You have a awful interaction, whatever it is. But if you walk away from that and you say, okay, well, what kind of growth can I find in that? Like, where can I grow from that? And even in school, right? Maybe you have a difficult interaction at school, but if you walk away looking for some kind of nugget of opportunity from every aspect of life, it makes life more tolerable during those tough moments.
Awesome. And Shara.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both Kai and Annie. Don't be discouraged, have an open mind, and just, you know, like, this may be cliche, but follow your heart. And if you don't know what you want, that's okay too. Like, I wandered around for a while before discovering what my passion really was, and I can't consider those years wasted. In fact, that life experience I gained from taking time to really figure out what I wanted has helped me a lot. And things have a way of working themselves out if you're patient, and when you finally decide what you want, somehow things, you know, they fall into place in a way that you're like, wow, that somehow unexpectedly worked out for me. And then I would also say, I wish when I was younger, I felt more comfortable with just reaching out to people who inspired me and saying, hey, can we get coffee? I really want to pick your brain about X and Y, and just hearing their journey and their stories. Because then, you know, it's not so intimidating and you're like, wow, everyone has this unique journey that they're on, and I'm going to find my way too. And that's really what's helped me. When I moved to California, I wasn't really sure what I wanted. I was a little bit intimidated by being with all these science people at Stanford who are really smart. I had never really done too much traditional science beyond high school. And then I just reached out to someone in San Diego and was like, hey, can you tell me about what you're doing? Because I really like your organization. And yeah, I moved to San Diego, and 10 days later, I had a job at that company, and it was just the most ridiculous. Like, it felt unreal at the time. So things just work themselves out. Don't be discouraged, and yeah, just shoot for the stars.
Fabulous. And I-Ching.
Yeah, I'll echo a little bit about kind of reaching out to people and networks. And I think when one is kind of young, or you have maybe a more limited scope, it seems really intimidating to reach out. But you got to kind of get to know people naturally. You just, you know, learn from people all along. The way I got my first job out of my PhD was completely coincidental. I thought maybe I wanted to do a postdoc, maybe I wanted to go into academia. And then one of my very close friends said, hey, you know, I'm at this great startup. I'm having a ton of fun. This isn't what I was thinking I was going to do. Because he thought he was going to be a professor. And he ended up loving the biotech community. And so I joined, and it was the time of my life as well. The irony, of course, is then he took a non-linear path and finally went back to becoming a professor after X number of years in biotech. So you're going to meet all sorts of people along the way. You're going to learn from all these different people who have these different life experiences. And you just keep learning and growing.
Thank you. I'm going to do a quick show of hands for our panelists on how many of you have taken a job that you weren't really sure of what it was, or how it was going to work out, or, you know, just some random, that sounded good, let's just go for it. Yep, there's your panel. So, so with that, I know we have some questions in the chat. I'm going to hand it back to Sarah. Thank you so much to the panelists for sharing. And let's go. Oh, sorry, did I forget? Did I get Tina? No, I forgot Tina. Sorry. There you go, Tina.
Thank you. And the irony of it being that a pearl of wisdom I was going to share was that someone taught me very early on in my sales career that you're not necessarily selling. What you really have is an idea. And if you don't share that idea with the rest of the world, you're really depriving people of, you know, potentially something amazing. So definitely feel confident to share what you're going through, to any thoughts that you have. There are no bad ideas often in brainstorming. So ironically, I didn't share that I hadn't gone yet during this panel. But yeah, to echo what everyone is saying, I just never thought that failing out of nursing school would be one of the best things to ever happen to me. And I wish that very early on, I learned to tune out a lot of that noise and just really believe in myself. And that, you know, stop comparing myself to others. Like, if you're not really necessarily doing things late. And I wish when I was 18, someone told me that a lot of being an adult is sort of learning by doing, and that we don't necessarily know what we're doing when we start. And the skill that we all acquire is learning what we need to know to get that job done later on.
Beautiful. Thank you. Apologies for that. Sarah.
That's so interesting. So I am a med school dropout. So like everybody else, I had a very untraditional path to where I am today. And I have been told to not say I'm a med school dropout. I withdrew from medical school. So when I was I think I was 12, I told my parents I'm going to be a doctor. And similar to Annie, nobody in my family was in healthcare. No female in my family had gone to college. And my dad is an immigrant, and he went to college, but he had no experience with the high school system here. So I really had to navigate a lot of it on my own. And when I got to medical school, I realized this isn't right. So I withdrew, and I had to figure out what to do next. And every job I've had is from people that I know. It's referrals, it's people saying, hey, you would be great for this role. Why don't you take a look at it? And many, like what I do now, I'm in medical affairs. So like I said, I work with pretty much every person on this call, not directly, but their departments. And so it's really working with all these amazing women, amazing people, and helping drugs get to market. And when I was your age, I did not know what medical affairs was. And I can tell you now, a lot of people still don't know what medical affairs is when they start in this world. But yeah, make connections, ask for people to mentor you. We love doing that. I can guarantee every woman on this call would be happy to be a mentor. It's my very favorite thing of being part of Young Women in Bio is the opportunity to encourage and mentor and inspire. So with that, we have a few questions in the chat box. So the first one is, how does your job affect your general lifestyle? Would anyone like to take the first crack at this one?
I'll try and tackle it. So, I mean, I'll compare it to like being at a New York City law firm, right? So when I was at my New York City law firm, I knew that I did not want to, there's really two paths you can take at a large law firm, and that is continuing your path to becoming a partner at the law firm or leaving. And I knew I did not want to be a partner because you cannot have a family, you basically have no life. A law firm is a really great thing to do at the start of your career to get that experience. I think it's a really great rite of passage. But if you want to be able to have a family, it's hard to continue that path to partnership because the hours are so intense. Going in-house, at least as an attorney, you know, the hours are not, they're not easy, but there's not gonna, but it's also like, I have so much passion for what we do. And I know that we are impacting patient and caregiver lives that the work life, it doesn't affect me as much. Now, I have 2 children, I'm married, so I do manage a work-life balance. But if I think about your question a little bit differently too, how does it impact my general way of life? One of the things that I think is really important, and especially in the field of law, and I think the women that I work really closely with on this panel might agree with me, is that you have to stay true to yourself. One of the things that I did, even when I went to that New York City law firm, was I refused to be a typical lawyer. And take that as you may in how you want to define a typical lawyer, but often they're very stuffy. They're very risk averse. And so I've changed that, and not changed that. I've changed a lot of lawyers that I've actually either mentored or managed and helped them understand that there's a different way to practice law, right? And so the other thing too is by staying true to myself, like I have a bunch of tattoos, I have different colored hair, like stay true to yourself in this whole journey. And no matter where you land, no matter what you end up doing, I think that is my biggest piece of advice going through this whole journey.
And Kai, did you want to add anything? I saw you take yourself off mute.
Just a little thing. So I guess with the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, my lifestyle has revolved around travel. Sometimes it's actually been too much and hard to maintain like relationships at home. But, you know, I'm finding a balance now with COVID. I don't travel at all, which is 1 year is huge for me. But I have to say, as much as I would, you know, complain a little bit about, oh, I'm on the road so much. I love it. I love to go to different cities and different restaurants. And then, you know, you have your work and it just kind of changes it up. So if you're a person that likes to be a little bit on the go, it's refreshing to have that type of role where you do get to travel and see different places and it's basically paid for. So that's a little positive in the work environment, I would say.
Absolutely. And it can be exhausting, but I miss it. And I imagine you do as well. I can't wait till we can travel again and get back to our normal daily lives.
Exactly.
Excellent. I think Christina wanted to add a little bit.
So I just wanted to sort of speak to the zigzagging a little bit and not necessarily always sticking to the same path that you think you're going to be on. I think I got involved in lab work as an undergrad, getting into the research lab early. And I think once you get into the research lab, you may find that you like it. And I really did like research and STEM and science, but you know, be careful with your advisors and mentors that you find, because a lot of the academic advisors will sort of put you on a path to making you think that being a professor is the only path there is. And I think attending a session like this, where you're seeing a lot of different paths, is really amazing. Because I mean, I really think I got sort of railroaded into a path where I thought academics was all there was. And you know, at some point, you know, I wanted to have a family and everything. And I don't want to live in the middle of nowhere. So, I mean, if I could have been an academic professor, and I was shortly with my husband in Mexico, actually, but, you know, we were in such a small town in Mexico and we just didn't want to stay there. So, you know, we came back and we're doing something different now, and that's okay. And so you should realize there are so many different paths. And if you're doing something that is not exactly what you want, there's always time to change it up and find something. And actually at some point I realized, like, I don't like lab work. Like somewhere along the way, I was like, you know, this is not really going to be for me, because I don't like the lab work and I don't want to be researching the same boring question for like the next 40 years of my life. What I really like to do is learn the science and do something different all the time. And so for me, what that has turned into is a job in grant writing, where I'm constantly working with different professors who are doing different types of science and helping them to put their research into the best light so that they can get funding for it. And that allows me to still be really involved in high level science, but always be doing something different, right? Always learning a different type of science. And I find that a lot more satisfying than sort of delving constantly deeper into smaller minutia of a topic that maybe no one will care about. So just keep going. And I think attending an event like this, where you see so many different paths, is wonderful, because you see that there's not just one way to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. So the next question, did you ever feel lost or unhappy going into biology? or expand that to science or your major?
I think the loneliest anybody ever feels is somewhere in the middle of their graduate career when nothing is working, when you doubt that you ever graduate, you think that you are complete and utter failure, and there's the kind of long, dark night of the soul, I think, for just about everybody in science sometime. And, again, it's all about, in the end, you pick yourself up, you realize that this is hard, but you can do it. And again, I still remember when my dad said, these are going to be the happiest years of your life. And I think he was looking back at his econ degree through rose-colored glasses, because when I talked to my mom, she's like, no, you're dirt poor and unhappy, right? And so again, somewhere through your scientific or non-scientific career, there are going to be some really rough days, and everybody will go through feeling lost or unhappy or unmoored or doubting yourself. And maybe you stay on the path, or as you've heard from others, maybe you transition, you move off that path and find a different path, which will be the right one for you at that time.
And I'll just add to that and sort of echo Annie's comment earlier of, for me, trying an experience and not liking it was as valuable as trying an experience and liking it, because if there was something that I was doing that I was like, whoa, this is dreadful, I can't even imagine doing this for another month, was what motivated me to go say, well, what else is out there and what would that look like? I went through medical school and residency, spent lots of years training to be a doctor taking care of patients, and I lasted 18 months, and I was like, wow, this is not actually what I want to be doing. And then, sort of had this crisis moment of, I just spent like 13 years in school. Like, what am I going to do now? But it was a great motivator to go find something else that did make me happier. So sometimes those, lost moments are the things that sort of give you a kick in the pants to go find what that next happy thing is going to be.
I think the other thing to take away from this too, both from I-Ching and Barbara, is, remember the network. Don't suffer in silence during these moments of like, crap, I think I made the wrong choice, right? And you've got WIB, you've got just, I can't bring home, and I think we all feel the same, the importance of having a network of people that you can talk with about the challenges that you're going through and ideas that you're having.
Thank you. The next question, and it's amazing. Like, I don't want to talk about myself too much, but this relates a lot. I react really strongly to this one. So I withdrew from medical school because of deep depression while I was in medical school. And it took a long time to have the courage to address what I was feeling, because I was convinced I had to be a doctor. There was nothing else in my life for me. And I had to get help. So, and that's probably my biggest piece of advice is ask for help when you need it. Do not be afraid to reach out for support, whether it's from your friends, from a medical professional, somebody else. And I realized I was depressed because of these things that I was feeling because of what I was doing, and I wasn't happy. And when I withdrew from medical school, it was like the biggest weight was lifted off of me. Now I had the crisis moment like Barbara did, where I was like, well, now what do? I've only ever thought of one thing, but it was the best possible thing I could have done for myself. So my biggest piece of advice would be reach out. Always, you have a support system around you. Let's do this one quickly. There's some great questions in here. One piece of advice to help you stick to your path. Shara, let's hear from you. What is one piece of advice to help you stick to your path?
I would just say to keep learning. Never feel stagnant in any position that you're in. And I think I'm fortunate to be in a position where I'm constantly adapting and learning. And this kind of speaks to an earlier question too about how my job affects my lifestyle. But I work a lot of the time in topics that have to do with environmental health. And that brings up these existential topics in my mind about where are we all headed, what's the state of the climate crisis and things like that. And it's really helped me to address a lot of kind of my own personal habits in terms of being wasteful, you know, having an open mind, being positive, because if you're not positive, what else, you know, what else is there a lot of the time? So that's kind of one thing that has really come to the forefront of my position that I'm currently in. And that has also sort of given me this sense of gratitude and gratefulness and a willingness to keep learning. So yeah, I would just say, just keep an open mind and constantly try and learn new things.
Excellent. All right. Alexis, what a great question. What should people from historically marginalized communities know if they want to pursue a career in your field or a job like yours?
Take that one. So I was thinking, it's a really good question. I think the first thing is to know that there's a lot of opportunities, and again, like, don't listen to like the noise in the background. But I also think there's two things that are really important. Networking, and I hate that term because I'm not really good at it, but I think I'm starting to call it like talking to people, having chats, having a conversation, but reach out to people that look like you. Like if you see them on a, like I do that. If you see them on a corporate website and you're like, oh, this person looks like me, I'm going to reach out to them. And I just reach out to them and tell them a little bit about myself and just say, hey, I'd love to talk, learn a little bit about you, and always make it about them, and that you want to, learn from them, and you have some questions or something very brief. And then the other thing is, I think it's very important to seek out internships and opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities out there. When I was looking, there wasn't even the internet. So, but there are opportunities for minorities in science and in industry. So I would look for those types of internships so you can get that, that hands-on experience.
I would definitely say reach out, because far and away, whether people reach out on LinkedIn or in some sort of networking, or when we go to an event, or, as young women in bio, many folks are just like, tell me more about this, or can I send you an email, or can we set up a time? And, if somebody says, okay, something's super busy at work, it's going to take me 10 days to do it, ask them again in a week, because like the answer isn't no. That's not a no. That's we're going to make it happen. And, ask again, reach out to another person, find another, because people will help and will support. They don't necessarily know to go pick you out to do that. But if you ask, far and away, people will provide you support.
Absolutely. And we're here. We want to help. We love talking about ourselves, as you can see, and we want to help you. We want to help you all succeed. If you could do it all over again, would you do the same thing? Would you choose the same path for yourself? And if not, why not? Who wants to take that? Annie, you're off mute. Why don't you go?
My answer is so easy. I would absolutely choose the same path. My path was not easy. There were a lot of bumps. There were a lot of, times where, I didn't know if I was going to be doing the right thing. I didn't know if I could make it, similar to Sarah's story. But I take all of those with opportunity, and I would not change a thing. I think I landed in the place where I'm supposed to be. I'm a firm believer in the universe having plans for us, and I couldn't be happier, so I wouldn't change it. So I'm sorry, that's probably not the answer you wanted to hear.
Well, and I was told I would never get into medical school. I was told, we wouldn't hire you for a job in industry, or because my background didn't, the path I had been on didn't look like what somebody was expecting. And I sort of am wired that if somebody says no, I go, watch me. And so just believe that, you know, maybe that's not the person that's going to hire you, but you're going to find a path, and there will be a door that's going to open and a door behind that. And for each time you've had one of those wins, tuck that away, because the next time you're up against something that seems like a bump or a wall that's going to be too high, look back and say, I've won at times that I didn't think I was going to make it before. So why wouldn't I do that again? Like, just, you know, store those up. I have, you know, a paper file folder, a shoebox, email box that I just tuck like anything that's a win away. And anytime I'm thinking, I don't know how this next thing's going to play out, I flip back through them and just, you know, make sure that you always believe in yourself, because you've had these wins along the way. Just catalog them.
So we're going to do the next one as a show of hands. Who amongst the panelists has felt imposter syndrome? Raise your hand. All right, every single one of us. So you can see this is very, very normal. And especially with women, it's very normal for us to feel this way. So great question. So now I'm going to tie a couple together. So Joanne asks, how do you learn to deal with rejection and maybe even failure while embarking on this path? And then how do you manage imposter syndrome when it comes up?
I can take a stab first. So I would say that over time, I've realized that all of the failures have actually been blessings in disguise. Everything that hasn't worked out has worked out somehow in the way that maybe at the time I didn't realize. So it may seem at the time like a failure or a rejection, but ultimately things do, at least I think so, they tend to work out the way they're supposed to. So just think of it with, even though, you know, it can be really challenging at the time, but if you can have some sort of a mindset where you're thinking of it with a kind of glass half full instead of the glass half empty, that really does help quite a bit. And then in terms of the imposter syndrome, my previous position, I was working in the marine tech industry, and there are a lot of like salty dogs in that industry, and it's very old and white and male. And that was a kind of an awkward, kind of harsh reality for me, being young, not being traditional in my role, but don't ever question the fact that you're there. You belong there, and you know, you have as much of a say as anyone else at the table, and be heard, and try not to be intimidated. Sometimes it's very difficult, but yeah, you have as much of a say as anyone else, and never doubt yourself.
I would also say I am a major, as Barbara knows well, I'm a major sufferer of imposter syndrome. I don't try and get rid of her all the time. She provides me a lot of grit. And so you know, sometimes she's a little too loud and I've got to push her down a little bit, but I try to use the imposter syndrome and you know, you just kind of take a look back at what you've achieved and you think, just like Shara was saying, you have a voice at that table just like anyone else. And while you're there kind of questioning yourself, it also makes you, it drives you more. So I use her in a good way.
Thank you. Okay, so what are some milestones that led to where you are today? Or how would you define your personal success? Like, what have you done along the way that has gotten you to where you are? And has that changed over time?
Saying yes to something you didn't know what it was. I remember and Sarah was talking about nobody's ever heard of medical affairs. The first job I took in medical affairs is somebody says you should take this job. And I said yes first, and then asked what it was afterwards, because I didn't know what it was. So I was like, well, okay, maybe that's going to be cool. But, you know, say yes. And then, you know, sometimes you just have to sort out the how and the why and the what afterwards.
I really resonate with that. I think we've touched upon imposter syndrome as well. It's also, you know, why, you know, do I think I can do it? No, I probably can't. This is new. This is a new role. I don't know enough. You know, say yes and jump in.
Excellent, thank you. What is the best career decision you've ever made? I'll go first, leaving medical school, 100%. And I think this answers everything. I had imposter syndrome while I was in med school. I had many identity crises after I left. I said yes to a job when I had no idea, like medical communications. I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea. And I started the job. I'm like, all right, I could do this. And then I heard about medical affairs and I thought, that might be interesting. We'll see. Yeah, for me, it was changing everything about what I had thought I would do in my career.
Mine was actually going to business school. That was probably the best career decision I made. It required a very deep faith in myself. My family was so concerned because Stanford was very expensive, and I didn't have the money for it. I had to take out loans, and they were questioning that, and they also questioned moving across the country. I was living in New Jersey. I had to move my whole life to California. That probably didn't make a lot of sense to them. I know it didn't, but it was honestly the best. And I always tell my mom now, wasn't that a good career decision? Wasn't that a good one? Because it really opened up so many doors, and I've had such great experiences and been able to work at a lot of small biotech companies, build a lot of relationships here, and also build a lot of companies, which is something that I didn't know that I really enjoyed, but I love working in small environments and taking something that doesn't look like much and building it into something that's amazing and that really serves patients. So yeah, I think earning the MBA and being able to merge the science and the business, it's resulted in limitless opportunities for me. And I paid off my loans already, so my family's happy.
Tina, what about you?
Oh man, the best career decision I've ever made. Yeah, I guess also to kind of echo you, like failing out of nursing school. And then at every step of the way, just taking the opportunity to meet people. Like every job that I have taken has been from someone I've known. Like I met someone at the gym, and that's how I got into biotech. He had just left a consulting firm, a very top 4 consulting firm, and needed some young person to kind of do all the analyst work. And I was happy to just jump at that. I had no idea what a business analyst was. And I don't think I understood until I left it, really. But, just keep going along. And my first job out of college, I was a lot more selective because I had been saying yes to a lot of things just to do it. And being selective that time around really paid off. Because I met a cohort of people that I think will probably stick with me for the rest of my career and that I can lean on. So yeah, 100% say yes to some strange things and set good boundaries and be selective at other times.
Anyone else want to share their best career decision?
I think this is just another flavor of what we've been saying, which is saying yes and kind of questioning after, but be feeling comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I'd say that my best career decision was to leave Amgen, and I was there for over 13 years. I was comfortable, I was complacent, but the myocardia opportunity arose, and at the time I had major imposter syndrome. I did not think I could go lead a legal team. I did not think I was worthy of that, but I did it anyway. And I was uncomfortable, and that was absolutely the best decision I ever could have made. It brought me out of my comfort zone into a new company, a smaller company where I got to learn a lot more. And then it set me up for this next job that I'll be embarking on. So definitely get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable.
We couldn't tell you were uncomfortable. That was internal. We didn't see that.
I told you, I push her down sometimes.
Another amazing question. How does your identity play a role in your current job?
Maybe I'll take a stab at that. I think one of the things about science is that kind of the stereotype, right, is that you've got to be analytical, you've got to be impartial, you kind of leave your personality at home. But I actually find that bringing my identity to my job as, someone who's passionate about mentoring, as someone who's passionate as a parent, and having these, those are just a couple aspects that if I bring my authentic self to my job, I'm more comfortable in my skin. I think I'm more comfortable as a team lead to have people kind of see that this is what you are as a fully faceted person. And so I do think that you can kind of balance all these different aspects of one's identity, which also changes over time too. None of us is static. And you bring yourself to work as well, your authentic self.
Anyone else?
No, I completely agree. I think bringing your full authentic self is really, I don't know, I think it endears people to you. And I think it builds some type of connection with others. I think it would be harder for me to do my job if I had to pretend and be somebody else in the workplace and then turn it on and then turn it off. So, I'm a very kind of jovial person and I'm always kind of smiling and laughing. And I used to try to stuff that down, but I found that actually people enjoy that and it becomes a fun element of the workplace. So I just try to bring myself in, and if you don't like it, then like, I'm kind of sorry, but not really sorry.
What do you think your job will look like 10 years from now?
Retirement.
No idea, but hopefully completely unexpected.
Yeah, because I think I'm going to get let go from my job in about 4 months. It's hard to say. I haven't signed the paperwork yet, so I'm not sure. So I don't know what I'm going to be doing in the fall. And I think that's one of the things that is really exciting about the smaller biotech space is we do go through a lot of changes. We are constantly reinventing ourselves or taking ourselves to somewhere else and seeing how we can fit into that new environment. So like I said, when I was 16, 17, I was going to be a doctor. And now I travel the world when we're not in COVID times, doing something very, very different. So you just never know where life's going to take you. What are some common misconceptions about your job? And what do people believe your job looks like versus what you actually do? I think Annie should start.
I was so excited to take this one. So I think that everybody thinks lawyers just sit behind a desk and just read all day long. And I will be the first one to admit that I cliff noted everything in high school, in college, and yes, even law school. Like I was not a reader. I do read a lot now. I do keep up with obviously regulations, but more enjoyable and more importantly is my ability to work side by side with the folks from medical affairs, the commercial teams, the Sarah, the Barbaras, the Kais, like everybody on problem solving and coming up with solutions. And I think that my most favorite aspect of my job is being asked to come to the table to solution with everybody, not because I'm a lawyer, but because I just come to the table with a different point of view and maybe just a different eye. And it's, so I promise I'm not sitting behind a desk just reading all day long and not doing anything fun.
And I would say just, I think one of the sort of misconceptions that I had is, I'm sort of at the higher levels of management. And, I sort of believe that, that's where decisions happen and everything sort of funnels down. And what I find is that things are a lot flatter and there's a lot more sort of interaction. And, the more sort of interesting people with different perspectives you put around the table, sort of echoing Annie and I-Ching, like, your ability to solve a problem, yes, as an individual, you can probably solve a problem, but your ability to sort of bring a group of people together and come up with like way better, more creative, never would have thought of that. Okay, that sounds cool, but maybe a little pie in the sky. Like, how do we like level that a little bit? But that's great. Let's do that. So it's like, I used to think of things as sort of stacked and hierarchical. And the reality is sort of the joy of working is that it's much more sort of horizontal partnerships than it is sort of, you know, I do this because the person above me told me to do this. Like,
Shara, anything to add to that? The misconceptions about your job?
I guess, I mean, it depends what point of view you look at it from. I think from the science side, a lot of the work that I do may not seem scientific because the role itself is not R&D. It's not the traditional science-based role. So from that point of view, I would say that, yeah, there are misconceptions regarding what I do. So for example, we have a huge R&D team for my company, and then there's only 4 or 5 of us who do non-science related, well, non-science in the fact that it's not the R&D side of the work. So I do get questions sometimes from my other coworkers, like, yeah, what do you do? Because you're not doing the science. So, you know, are you just like talking about it with other people? And I am in reality talking about it with other people and trying to convey the message in a way that people who aren't scientists will understand. So it's taking the science and adapting it and making it more digestible for a layperson audience or for, you know, consumers who are curious about our product, but they don't really understand, like, what is the process? Like, what is cell cultured seafood? Like, I don't understand what that is. So I would say that I am working in the science, but maybe at not the same level that a scientist would be, but that doesn't make it any less important in terms of the sort of scientific process that needs to happen for something to become commonplace or for people to accept or adopt a certain scientific, you know, in belief, invention, like a milestone. So yeah.
And Tina, what about you?
Yeah, I thought that sales reps would just cold call all day and they were really annoying and would lug pipette tips into labs. But what it actually has turned out to be, especially if you're kind of working in a very niche sector of biotech, it's so much fun. Like, I am going into labs of these amazing professors, amazing researchers who are doing groundbreaking work, and you're reading through their abstracts and their papers and their proposals, and you're helping them write these proposals sometimes, or you're helping them generate data that sometimes it's like first in kind data. And I tell people I get to talk about a lot of science and help plan experiments, and then I get to run away after the pipette tips get busted out, so I don't have to do any of that. And yeah, it's really enjoyable. Like, I get to travel like a lot, and I write my schedule. I bake a lot. I have a lot of like hobbies, and that's what professional success looks like to me, is being like a very well-rounded person, and at the same time being able to love my job and be willing to put in the long and hard hours because it's so mission driven. So yeah, if you told me that's what a sales rep does and that I was going to fall in love with that job, I would have thought you were crazy. But it's nothing at all like what it is on TV. I'm not trying to sell you a used car. It's like cool genetic technology.
Thank you. And I-Ching, what about you as our scientist on the panel?
Again, I you know, the stereotype is that it's a lonely job. You know, you kind of there at the bench and kind of, you know, the lone laborer, you know, on the bench. But no, it's really a social, it's a team-based job. You work with people in business development and medical affairs and lawyers all the time. And it's really about the connections. It's really about, you know, bouncing the ideas off. But it's such a diverse set of people that you work with. You know, science is just such, I think, a very, you know, everybody here has some aspect of the science, right? And it's just so broad that, again, it's not a lonely endeavor. It is a team endeavor, I think.
Thank you. All right, so we are coming up at the end of our session, and we have one last question I would love for you all to answer. And why don't I'll start at the top of my little square as I-Ching will go with you first. If you were to go back in time, what would you have told your younger self with the experiences you've learned today?
I think to really kind of believe in myself more and to enjoy the path, more, kind of be more open to change maybe, and also just take the time to reflect. That's a lot of stuff, right? But I think certainly for me, when I was younger, I had a lot less confidence in myself, in my gut instincts, etc. And I spent a lot of time just kind of ruminating on it. I would say, you know what, just kind of calm down a little bit more. We'll be okay. Take the time to reflect, take the time to network, take the time to enjoy what you're doing.
Thank you. Shara?
Yeah, I totally agree. I would say if I had the chance to go back and tell my previous self, I would just say enjoy the journey, like relax a little bit. Don't be so stressed out about what happens in the future. The future will happen and it'll happen in the best way possible. And now that I'm older, I hopefully can take that with me in any sort of adversity that I face throughout the rest of my life, that, you just enjoy the path, even if it seems to be a struggle at times, it'll all kind of work itself out.
Excellent. Tina?
I would say lean into those mistakes. They're gonna happen all the time, every day even, and there will be some really momentous ones that are gonna feel insurmountable, but just lean into it and take it into little digestible steps and little digestible pieces. And I promise you, when you get out of it and you turn around, you're gonna be that much more proud of yourself. And if all else fails, I really love, Annie, I do the same thing. I refer to all my imposter syndrome and all of that. It's like a third person. And my sister will tell me don't talk about, when I say something bad about myself, she'll say, don't talk about my friend that way. And I'll tell myself this now, where if you hear imposter syndrome, I'm like, Tina, don't talk about my friend like that. And you're going to be fine. You're doing great. And you deserve all the good things that are coming to you.
It's wonderful. Such great advice. Barbara?
I would say not be as afraid to reach out to more mentors, hear more stories. As you've learned tonight, everybody sort of loves telling their story and everybody has a path. And, even if it's sitting next to somebody on a plane or at a career fair, just ask people, how'd you get where you are? What was the best and the worst part of that journey? And you'll find people are very, very open to sharing that. And it probably took me the first 10 years of my career before I was willing to really start asking those questions. And asking to hear people's stories. They're really, in very rare occasions, will people not offer up, the version of their story, probably in more depth than you would imagine they would be willing to do. So don't be afraid to ask.
Okay.
Probably two things I would try to tell myself. The first, similar to what others have said around treating these challenges and setbacks and bad bosses and companies nearly collapsing, you have to see the opportunity in it, the positive in it, what is the learning, and not be stressed and focused on this person and this company. Just settle in and just try to extract the learning from it and just move on. Let all the bad stuff stay in the back, in the past, and just take whatever you learned from it. Now I know XYZ, I don't like this, I don't like that, or whatever. And then the other thing that I still struggle with is, always comparing yourself to other people. It's so hard to not do it with the way our environment is, but I would say going to this business school at Stanford, it's these kids that I went to school with they have gone to Facebook early, and they've done these things, and they have a ton of money now. And so, you know, you have to really be, I'm on my journey, I'm on my path, I'm confident in what I'm doing, and what I'm doing is helping society. Like, I feel that that's very important, that I stay true to that, and it's not that focus needs to stay there and not on what other people are doing and their measures of success.
Thank you. Annie.
I think I'd have two as well. One would be don't let anybody hold you back. And you know, we've been saying that another way of like shutting out the noise. I struggled with that when as my younger self in feeling confident enough to actually shut the noise out. But I think, you know, don't let anybody hold you back. This is your journey. And then the other thing is finding a place in life that makes you the best version of yourself that you can be, whether that's at an organization because of the culture, the mission, the passion, the drive, the vision. You know, you will end up both with friends or colleagues and at organizations that may not bring out the best version of you, and be confident and know that your journey is to go to another place where you will be at a place where you feel like you are the best person that you can be.
Great advice. Christina.
Hi. Yeah, I think one of the things I think I would tell myself is probably to focus less on all of the technical skills, and like I always feeling like I had to, you know, read more or know more about the particular science field, but really, you know, the soft skills will take you a lot further in life. I think, you know, you want to focus on communication. You know, I was never thought I was a great writer, but I mean, in the end, you know, writing is where I'm at now. And that's, you know, communication and being able to talk clearly with people and always be able to manage people. You want to focus on, I think, a lot more of those soft skills. And I like the idea of always trying not to compare yourself to others. I think I need to continually hear that. I need to tell myself that probably today to not just my younger self, but every day. So I think that's great advice at any stage of life.
Thank you. You made it really hard for me to pick something different. I would have told myself all of these things. I think the communication, I can tell you, all of us on this panel write a lot. A lot of what we do is writing and communicating with others or talking. I was extremely introverted when I was a kid. I hated public speaking, and I don't particularly like it now, but I know I'm good at it. And I think if I had to go back in time, I would say, relax. It's going to be okay. Be open to change, because life is going to throw you some curveballs, and have fun, have more fun, enjoy your youth, find things beyond science and school and all of the pressure that we put on ourselves. Find an outlet that will give you joy. And that might be science, it might be school, but there should be other things in life that will bring you happiness. And it's okay to enjoy those things as well. And I just, the last one just flew out of my head, but I think we've gotten some great advice for you all. I really hope you enjoyed this panel today. We're so happy you were able to join us. We are thrilled, and there will be more events. We have from Young Women in Bio San Francisco, we have an event coming up on April 14th. It'll be another virtual panel with entrepreneurial women. We have the CEO of Caribou. We have some executive level women from other companies in the Bay Area, Encardia, the CEO from Encardia. And then we have one other woman who's a researcher at UCSF. So this is going to be a rock star panel. Definitely, we will send the information to Jose and Emily so that they can let you know about it. We'll also have an event coming up on April 24th. I'll keep that one a secret for now. And then there'll be some other things May 14th. So all of this will come out. We have a lot going on in the Bay Area. Christina, I don't know if you have any events coming up that you wanted to plug at this point.
Well, we have our Bio Influencer series, which is a monthly series that we've been doing in the Southern California here. You can still register for that if you're interested. Our next one will focus on the arts in STEM. And so that should be really fun. And I know the leaders of that session are going to be great. And then we're planning something for probably the end of April or beginning of May with Thermo, where we want to focus on the Nobel Prize that was given in last year for CRISPR technology. And we're probably going to make some DNA jewelry there too. So you can learn about the structure of DNA while making your own DNA necklace.
It's amazing. And we should talk. We have some ideas up here for that as well. Again, I lost my train of thought. So yes, we have one thing we've agreed to do is for all of the events while we're virtual, we'll take advantage of being virtual. We will invite every student from SoCal or from Los Angeles and from the Bay Area to all of our virtual events in San Francisco, and SoCal will do the same. So lots of opportunities for you to hear from more amazing women. I will be sending out a survey to all of you on the call to hear your thoughts, what we could do better, what you liked about this. And we'll also include the LinkedIn accounts for all of the panelists so that if you want to connect with us, feel free. We would love to hear from you more. So thank you again. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Take care.